I said, why don't you teach him to answer his messages like I teach him to keep in touch with you? I taught him to message you back and send you a message from the hotel to say we're going up to the pool. I told him to call you because you're probably missing him. You've never done that. I've got 4 or 5 months of messages in my iMessages. He hasn't answered me once. So why can't you teach him to answer his messages to his dad like I teach him to keep in touch with you? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, I asked you a question. Please don't give that Singaporean refuse to answer, because if I answer, I'll show that I'm either wrong or I'll have to agree with him, which I don't want to. I asked you a question. Can you answer?
So if he doesn't do it, if he doesn't feel to, then...
Well, he didn't want to message you, but it's not about just his rights. It's about teaching your children to have manners.
Yeah.
So teach him to have manners and teach him to answer his messages. Because if he doesn't, I've told him, if he doesn't answer his messages, all he's going to have is Thai lessons in the FaceTime call every day. And he had a telling off yesterday. He had a telling off yesterday.
You keep forcing him to, you see.
I'm not forcing him to. I'm trying to break the damage you have done, knowingly or unknowingly. Not say you're doing it knowingly, but you have done damage. We both do damage, knowingly or unknowingly. Now, I think that you would be a good parent if you told him, say, hey, you haven't answered any of Dad's messages. He's trying his hardest. He's sending you videos. He's sending you Happy New Year. He hasn't even answered me back to say Happy New Year, Dad. He hasn't answered a single message. Now, if that was with you, if he was living with me, let me finish. If he was, let me finish.
I'm not going to talk anymore.
Well, let me finish and I won't scream.
Can you just stop it?
No, you're trying to stop me saying what I'm trying to say.
I'm not stopping you. Don't scream.
If he lived with me and he didn't answer any of your messages, he would get told off and he would be taught to have good manners and have the good manners and decency to answer his mum. Wouldn't that be right? If my son was ignoring your messages and you were sat alone in Singapore, sending messages every day to your son like happy birthday, and you never got an answer, or if it was New Year's Day and I never even told him, call your dad in the morning, give him an extra call and wish him Happy New Year, I would be a bad dad. But you just sit there and let him ignore me, and you let him never answer my messages, and your only answer is, it's his rights. He does have his rights, and while we're talking about rights, he has the right to leave and enter his own country for purposes of family reunion, which he's being deprived of, and which you can free him from by giving him your personal consent, which you won't do. You'd rather let him spend 5 years without an overnight in Singapore and 5 years without a visit to Thailand, so that after 5 years I can come and pick him up and take him for a shock 7 days of overnights without a single warm-up. What's good idea about that? And you don't teach him to answer my messages.
Yeah, I just want to know what is it that you want.
I want you to teach him to answer his bloody messages like I would the other way round, because it's bad manners to let your dad send you messages for months and just ignore them. That's not his right. That's showing that you are teaching him to be a bad-mannered little boy.
I didn't call to listen to your lectures.
Well, I'm asking you to teach him.
Because I see, so you have to ask yourself and you go with how you feel about it.
No, I'm asking you to teach him to answer his messages like a good-mannered little boy should do with his father. Why hasn't he answered a message in 4 months? And why haven't you taught him to do so? Do you think that's okay? Do you think that's his right? You think that's his right to not answer messages? You have to answer why he wouldn't, because any normal child would answer messages if they had a normal relationship. Proved by the fact that when you send him a message, he answers you straight away. But when I send him a message, he ignores it. Now, a child's natural instinct is to respond to his parent when they speak to him or communicate. And it's happening on one side and not the other, which is total proof of parental alienation, I'm sorry. Now, he hasn't answered a single message, and I'm asking you why you don't teach him to answer his messages. Simple question. Why don't you teach him? Don't you think it's good manners to answer your parent just like he answers you? How would you like it if he ignored your messages? Would you like it?
Talk to him about it, okay?
You better talk to him about it.
Yeah, if he doesn't want to, or
You
he has
better-
his own word, then
No, if he doesn't want to, you better teach him to want to. Because if he didn't want to, I'd say, I don't care if you want to. It's about making an effort, son. Because life isn't all about what you want to do. If you just do what you want to do, you won't have any friends. If you just take from them and never give them anything back. And if they talk to you and you never answer them back, that's not about what you want to. That's not how to teach your child. And so if he doesn't want to, you don't say, okay. You say, no, your father loves you. And he has the goodness to talk to you, and it is common human manners to answer a message when you are written to or spoken to. And you teach him that, because that is the right way, not if he wants to. And if he doesn't want to, that's only because of the parental alienation that has happened to him. Because if he was a normal child, he would want to, the same way he wants to talk to you. He talks to you all the time on messages, which is proof that that's the normal thing of a child when his mum or dad is in a different place and he's on his own or he's with another relative, to keep in touch with your parents. Now, he should want to call me. He was alone that day when you were at work, and he said, what are you doing? Why you leave me alone?
He's like that morning go to work is very normal, okay? So if you make a police report, then it's...
Yes, but you answered him, didn't you? When he said, where are you? You answered him, didn't you?
What you did, what you're doing is also, what you're doing is very destructive.
Yes, it's very destructive because you are damaging him, and the only way I can remedy it is to put him through... He's the one who suffers for what you're doing.
These are the things that you're doing is helping. It's not...
He got told off yesterday for not answering messages, right? And so because you haven't taught him to answer messages, that's your bad doing.
I have to hold the phone.
Sorry? Okay.
Stop screaming.
Sorry. I didn't realize. I was holding too close. I hold the phone too close to my voice, and I have a loud voice.
Yeah, you don't talk gently, right? You always scream.
Okay, I will try. The point is, messages. You should teach him, as a good parent, to keep in touch with his dad, because that's the point of the visits, it's the point of the rulings, to build up the relationship before I take him to Thailand. Now, the best way to do it is not with a half-hour forced call at 7:30 that both you and him think you have to do, which makes him not want to do it, rather to have the freedom to talk and chat whenever you want, just like he does with you. Now, when you send him a message, he answers you. What if you sent him messages and he didn't answer you? You'd then start calling mum, wondering if he's okay, wondering where he is. Now, I send him a message and he doesn't answer. What's good about letting him ignore his father? That's not good parenting. I told him to message you, and I do every time I take him, if you're not with us. Which the last time was the first time you really weren't with us. And you got messages and calls every single day. And on the unsupervised visits, I invited you with us, which I was happy to do because it's great to do things together as a family. And he needs that. And that's why I did it for him. Because if it wasn't for him, I'd just do it alone. Although I do enjoy your company when we have a meal together. And it was very nice. That Singaporean meal was very nice. But my point is the messages. And I don't think you understand that telling yourself that if he doesn't want to, then just let him do that. Well, what if he doesn't want to shower? Or what if he doesn't want to go to school? So don't send him to school. It's not about what he doesn't want to. He's a minor. And he has to do what his parents teach him. I teach him to keep in touch with his mum. When he has his holiday in Thailand, you don't get more than one FaceTime call. But to be quite honest, I will let my son call you when he wants. And when we're out at a water park or whatever we're doing, I'll make him FaceTime you so you can see what he's doing. Because I think that's very, very healthy thing to keep the child in connection with both his parents. Whereas when you go out, you never even think of me and you just let him forget about me. Now, I just have one question. Why aren't you teaching him to answer his messages? Because by not doing so, you're making him get the telling off for what you have done. Because he would answer them normally if there was not something wrong. He thinks he doesn't have to, and he thinks he's not allowed to because he only has a 7 o'clock call. And I keep telling him, you can call me all day. The day he was asking where you are and you were at work and he was lonely and scared because Evil Dragon was sending him messages. And first of all, he said it's because he's scared of me. And then later he said he's not scared of me Because I said, well, if that's okay, then I'll go away and I won't ever come back. And he went white, felt sick, and said, no, I do love you, Daddy, and I do want you to come and see me. But first of all, I asked him if he wanted me to come and see him in Singapore, and he said no. I said, okay, I'll go away and I'll never come back. Then he started crying. Then he started crying, and I said, well, why are you crying, son? Speak your real feelings. And he said, I do.
You want him to speak his real feelings?
I had to force it out of him because of the damage you've done.
He has his real feelings.
He does, and they came out after I threatened to never come back again.
You don't want to accept, even that he tells you, or if it's a yes or it's a no, you won't accept it either way, right?
Did you hear what I just said?
Yes, I'm hearing.
So there's his real feelings. He said he didn't want me to come back and see him. So I said, okay, I'll never come again. I'll get a flight home tonight and you stay with Mum tomorrow. He went white and started nearly to cry. And I said, okay, son, get your real feelings out and speak, because if not, I really... Listen, I'm talking. You want me to speak quietly? Do you want me to speak quietly? Then let me finish. Let me finish, because I'm trying to get this out. Yeah? And he said he didn't want me to come. So when I said, okay, I won't come anymore, he changed it, started crying and said, yes, I do want you to come, Daddy. And I said, do you want to come to Thailand or not? Because if not, I'll go away and never come back. He said, yes, I do want to come to Thailand, Daddy. After having said he doesn't want to. And the only thing that brought his feelings out, was when he thought that Daddy was gonna go away and disappear and never come back. And I had to commit that cruelty to him to bring out his real feelings, because you have brought these superficial feelings that he thinks he doesn't want Daddy to come and he doesn't want to talk to Daddy. But as soon as he thinks he's gonna lose his Daddy, his face goes white, he feels sick, and he speaks his real feelings if you're not listening. But if you're listening, he just remains quiet.
Okay.
No, that's what happened. He told me he didn't want me to come. So I said, okay, I'll go away and never come back. And as soon as I said that, he went into shock. So who's taught him to tell me he doesn't want me to come?
Nobody taught him anything.
You have.
He doesn't, but then you scare him, okay?
Scare him how? I have to scare him because you have programmed him to think he doesn't want a daddy. But as soon as I confront him with the thought of, okay, if you don't want a daddy, I'll just go away, he looks extremely shocked.
Would you have go away? No, right?
No, because he's brainwashed. But if that was his real feelings, if it was his real
feeling, would you have?
If it's his real feelings, yes. And so, is that his real feelings in your opinion?
I don't know.
Well, let's go to a psychologist the next time I come, and we'll see what his real feelings are. We'll see what his real feelings are.
You are going a bit too far already.
Oh, I'm going too far. I've just written to every single United Nations and Human Rights company, and I've got hundreds of people. I've got hundreds of people writing to those agencies to complain about this, and everybody gets a free ebook if they do. And everybody's writing. All of my subscribers and all of my supporters are writing to the United Nations.
By doing this, that you are helping, right? It's not.
Well, by teaching my son to answer his messages, none of this conversation would be happening. Okay, let's skip all of that stuff, what we're arguing about, because we never get anywhere. We don't agree, and we have different ideas on it. You know what
I will talk to him about the messages anyway. Again.
Yes, but if he doesn't want to, then do what the same as when he doesn't want to have his dinner, or when he doesn't want to go home yet, or he doesn't want to go to bed. Because it's not about what he wants to, when what he wants to is not good for him, because he's a child. And what he needs to do is to know, first, good manners is answer when your dad talks to you. 2, answer his messages. 3, teach him that although he has to call at 7 o'clock, doesn't mean he's not...
You are telling me what to do now.
I'm asking you that the day you were at work, I told him, look, next time if you're scared, or if Popo's busy and you're feeling lonely in the room and Mummy's busy and can't answer, just FaceTime me, because although you're have to call me at 7, it doesn't mean if you're lonely, you can't just put the FaceTime on and you can keep doing your things in your room and just see Daddy working in his room. You don't have to talk, and you know somebody else is there. I do it with my girlfriend every night when I'm in the hotel in Singapore. We put FaceTime on, I stick the charger on, she does her stuff, I do my stuff, but it's just nice to once in a while turn over and say, hey, what you doing? And it's like having somebody in the room. And I told him he can do that. And I don't see why he shouldn't be able to. What damage does that do?
But if he doesn't want to, he doesn't. If he wants to,
If he doesn't want to, it's because he hasn't been
then you
taught.
have all this, I'm telling you, been taught. It's like we are talking and then you just want it your way. I don't know how to talk to you.
You just want it your way. I can say the same thing.
I already told you he
That's
wants
a
to
stupid
be
thing.
happy.
Of course I want it my way, because I'm me. The same way you want it your way, because you're you. But my son has rights. And he has the right to learn manners. Now, I teach him manners to answer people when they message him. Last point is Uncle Paul called him and you hung up.
I didn't know
Yes,
that.
you fucking did.
No, I didn't.
And do you know what? Uncle Paul is writing a police affidavit in complaint, which we're going to file.
Okay, but I really didn't know. So you can go ahead and do what you want.
Okay, well, you tell him to call Uncle Paul and wish him New Year today, because it's his uncle. Teach him to keep in contact with his relatives. Teach him to keep in. Just
It's
put
like
it
you
simply. I'll try to say it
Suddenly
nicely.
push all these things that are not true, right?
I'll try to say it nicely.
When was called? When? It's like you said Christmas until Christmas Eve you were around. When was the call? And there was a call. It's like there's no voice at the background. Of course he will put down.
That's a good
Say
excuse.
hello. It's not an excuse. It's okay. I don't stop him.
So why didn't you call back?
I have nothing.
So why
I think
didn't you
there's
call
nothing
back?
I didn't know. Okay, it didn't show.
Well, you do
I
now,
didn't
so
know.
call him and wish him a Happy New Year, for God's sake. Because it hurts him too. He's just called me and talked about it, and he's very hurt. He loves his nephew, and it's his uncle. And to be quite honest, whether you know it or not, because I've talked to him, and he won't say it in front of you, he does love Uncle Paul, and he remembers things that he says he doesn't remember in front of you. I swear it to you on my mother's grave. I swear it to you. May I drop dead. May the Buddha curse me for eternity into the 10 hell worlds if it's not true. Right?
I can say the same.
I have asked my son about things, and it took me a long time, and in the end he remembers things. He remembers Thailand, he remembers the old home. I've got a video of him saying, do you remember Daddy hitting you how many times? And he stays silent, and I say, how many times did Daddy hit you compared to Mummy? And he says, Mummy, a lot more. Spanking? I never hurt my son. I spanked
You
him
hurt him
5
very
times.
bad.
How did I hurt him?
Anyway, I didn't call to talk to you about
How did I
this
hurt
New
him?
Year's.
Well, okay.
It's New Year's time.
Okay,
I don't
well,
want
it's
to-
a
I
Happy
don't
New
want to-
Year for you, and for
It's
your
not
mum
happy,
and your.
It's a New Year. Thank you.
May your mum and your dad.
You also have to accept some of the things. You keep forcing it. You know, it's like, get on with your life, right?
Get on with the life. I can't get on with my life until my son is allowed to travel.
It's like, you just have to stop.
Simone, until the day my son is allowed to travel, you're going to have to put up with this. And so are the United Nations. So is Jennifer Jokstad, the head of the Children's Rights of United Nations Bangkok. So is Mick from MIKK. So is Ishtar from MIKK/EV.de, who are the mediators with the government of Singapore. And they're all going to never stop hearing about it from me. I now have opened my YouTube channel, and I'm making YouTube video explanations. And I'm opening on Facebook my campaign. And I'm giving a free ebook to anybody who has the generosity and compassion to write to all of the 12 email addresses I've given to
Yeah,
complain
if the people
about
know the
Angelo's
truth,
right.
They wouldn't do so.
Angelo is not allowed to travel.
Yeah, he doesn't want to. If he wants to, I've told him, I will let him come to Thailand. But he also doesn't want to.
He doesn't
Okay.
want to.
No,
Why doesn't he want to?
he doesn't want to.
Why? Why? Because
I'll speak to him.
he's had 3 years with you to alienate him. And so if he doesn't want to, we have a problem, because when he's 10, he's coming. Unless you doing what you're probably doing, trying to prepare something to stop it from happening when the day comes, because I know that's what you're trying to do. And if you do that, there'll be real trouble. I'm telling you, if you do that and stop my son from having his holidays using some kind of legal lies, I swear to you that there will be real trouble, bigger than you can ever imagine. Bigger than ever you can imagine, so don't you dare do that. My son has a right to travel, and I have to wait in hell for another year and a half or more, 18 months, until I can take my son for a week's holiday. Now I'm telling you, I'm going to take all of those holidays I mentioned, which is going to be 40 odd days a year, unless you agree to allow him 21 days instead of 3 visits. Really about that. But at least today you give him a teaching to have good manners. You give him a teaching in manners. Means that when your daddy sends you a message...
What you are doing now and you're asking me for favor, not favor to do it. I will talk to him, yes, but you think about what you are doing. You are disrupting our life too.
How?
And it's not fair.
How am I disrupting your life?
All the campaigns that you're making, do you think it's fair?
Do you think it's fair that Angelo is deprived of his right to travel? Do you think it's fair that Singapore is on every human rights website with it's 457 out of 470 nations?
Okay, you are not helping at all.
Do you think it's fair that Angelo is not to... Do you think it's fair that you abducted Angelo? Do you think it's fair that you abducted Angelo? Don't talk to me about fair. Your life is disrupted. Your life is disrupted because you abducted your own child, and you are still and we are both suffering the effects, as is Angelo. Don't you blame me about the effects and disrupting.
You left, okay?
I did not left. I never left. I threw you out and we had a fight.
No, you left here, Singapore. He was born here. His life was here, but you left.
No, we left.
You don't want to
We left. We left. I didn't have a job in Singapore. I didn't have a job.
You should have gone and find one if you could make it.
I tried to find many jobs, and you know very well I could not get a work permit without a job, and I couldn't get a job without a work permit.
You have tried hard enough, you could.
We moved to Thailand for 5 years.
You didn't move to Thailand.
Yes, we did.
Thailand was the home. No, we didn't.
Excuse me? 5 years of his life, 4 of them were in Thailand.
It's not worth to fight about all this because you got your point, I got my point.
According to the Hague Convention, the habitual place of residence of a child is where he lived the longest. And up to when you abducted him, the place where he lived the longest was Thailand. It's where we lived, it's where we worked, it's where we made money, and it's where we lived. So stop lying. I did not go away. I went to get a job, and I brought you both over as soon as I had enough money to take care of you both.
Yeah.
And you came.
You left Singapore.
You came, and he went to school here as well until I pulled him out.
Then you don't want to see your point then.
I didn't leave Singapore because I couldn't stay in Singapore. I didn't have a residence or a job. And in Thailand, I had a residence and a job. And I now have a very good job and a very good wage and a very good house. Don't try to lie and say I left Singapore. You left. You abducted my child from Singapore without my consent or knowledge.
Stop screaming, my ears are bursting.
It is against the law to take a child out of the country without the consent of the other parent. You broke the law. Don't tell me I left. We were living together, married in Thailand, with a rented house in both our names on the contract, which proves we were living here. You don't rent a house if you're not living. And we had a 3-year contract. So don't tell me we were not living here and that I left. I came here to get a job, and you know it, and you came after me, but you didn't want to live in Thailand, you didn't like it, and you never told me. I didn't realise that. That I will accept. And that you may have thought, okay, I'll stay with him in Thailand until he reaches school age.
So why don't you have a life then?
And I do remember you talking.
Leave us to get on with our life.
I do remember you talking about when he reaches about the age 10. This is what we talked, that when he reaches 10, that we come back to Singapore. And the one thing I did talk about the possibility with you.
Life with your girlfriend and leave us to get on with our life.
Sorry, say that again?
Why don't you also get on your life with your girlfriend and let Angelo and I get on with our life?
That I should leave you and Angelo alone, right? And let you get on with your
just
life.
let us get with all this nonsense.
I can't let you get on with your life because you're retaining my son, and I have a right for him to
then
travel.
If you want to think this way, I cannot stop you.
My
also.
son,
That's your...
My son has a right to travel.
My son has the right to say that he doesn't want to come too.
But he has to say it, not you. and without your presence. And so that's where it's going to happen, with a United Nations present and a child psychologist.
They are not involved in this.
Oh, really?
That's it.
Yes, they are. Oh, yes, they are. But you just don't know it, because I've got hundreds of emails here and I'm communicating with the United Nations.
Okay, you do what you do. You think that it's not disruptive? It is disrupting the life, and you go on, Spencer.
Of course it's disrupting the life. Don't you know that parents that abduct their own children across international borders without permission of the other parent disrupt the life of the child? It's you who has disrupted our lives, not me. And the reason the disruption continues is because you stand between me and my son. I'm not disrupting your life until I have my son's right to come under Article 10 to travel, leave and enter his own country for purposes of family reunion with his father in the home. We will have these interruptions in our lives, because he has that right and he's denied it, and the United Nations agree that he is being denied his right. They're just looking through all the evidence I have and waiting until we can find the point where we can come to Singapore and make Singapore delete that rule and allow my child to travel immediately. And that is in process with the United Nations, and I'm talking with their official Singapore appointed official government European Parliament mediation agency, who actually know Irene Hennigan personally, who is the head of the United Nations Parental Child Abduction Mediation section. So don't think that nothing is happening. Something is happening.
I know. You already said what?
It could all stop by my son starting his holidays as of this year instead of when he's 10, and then I'll shut up, and then everything will be fine. But it has to be more than 8 times a year for 7 days. It has to be like twice a year for 21 days is enough, and I'll come to Singapore 3 times. It's so expensive, Simone, for me to come to Singapore. I mean, apart from what we're all arguing about
You
here.
just refuse to see it, okay? It's like, it's up to you.
You know how much it cost me those 5 days?
I will have a talk with Angelo. Since you also think that he also has his feelings and his rights.
Okay,
and
but
I also respect
okay,
his.
but
if he doesn't want to,
there you go. That's the thing. That's the thing. If he doesn't want, if he doesn't want to go to bed, do you make him go to bed? If he doesn't want to put his clothes on and go to school, do you make him put his clothes on and go to school? Yes, you do. So if he doesn't want to answer his dad's message, you make him, because it's not about what he wants.
Talking about the messages or about the traveling? Don't confuse me, one by one, Ken.
I have already asked him about that.
Everything.
I've already asked him about that.
So have I.
I said to him this: if you lived with me.
Okay.
If you lived with me, son, I said to him about this. I said to him about this. I'm trying to tell you something.
I'm telling you too.
Okay, what?
Okay, you tell me that he said he wants. I told you that he said he doesn't want.
Well, there you go. We need a psychologist to find out. But what I do tell you is, any child who knows his dad's got a swimming pool and a nice garden to play in does want to. And if he doesn't, then something's been done to him. Because I've never hurt him, only you have. You poured acid on him. You tried to kill yourself with acid, with bleach, and poured it all over yourself with him in your lap, which you deny and pretend didn't happen. And then you teach him to remember me throwing him across a room, which I never did. The other thing I ever did was pick him up when we were having an argument, take him in the room and put him on the bed and lock the room so that he couldn't hear us arguing.
You forgot. You were too stoned to know anything.
Oh, you were too stoned. You were smoking meth, Simone.
You were.
You weren't? Do you deny that?
You were too stoned to know anything. Anyway, I don't want to.
You never smoked meth in Thailand.
Like I said, now I didn't call to argue with you.
You're refusing to answer the question.
Things.
You said I was stoned. You said I was stoned.
Okay, I'm wanted on the other line. Sorry.
You said I was stoned, but you smoked meth. You smoked meth, and you're refusing to answer because you refuse to admit it.